My parents sold my future for a lie wrapped in a 3-car garage and a perfect green lawn. I found out on a Tuesday. It was a kind of sweltering, oppressive summer day that makes the air over the blacktop shimmer like a mirage, promising a relief that never comes. I was on my hands and knees in the rich, dark soil of my mother's prized flower bed, the sharp scent of mulch and petunia blooms thick in humid air. Each plant I tenderly placed into the earth felt like a small act of defiance against the decay festering within the walls of the house behind me. The invoice from the community college bursar's office was a square of crumpled, anxious heat in my back pocket, a final notice stamped in angry, uncompromising red letters. My shift at the Greasy Spoon Diner downtown didn't start for another 2 hours, and all I could think about was the $3,422.58 I still owed for the fall semester, a sum that might as well have been $1 million. My name is Leo Evans. I'm 19, and I've lived my entire life in the long, meticulously manicured shadow of my older sister, Chloe. My parents, Richard and Cynthia Evans, were the undisputed pillars of our quaint, picture-perfect suburb of Oak Ridge Heights, the kind of people who believed a fresh coat of paint on the shutters could solve any problem, and who cared more about the brand of their patio furniture than the fractured happiness of their children, so long as everything looked impeccably perfect from the outside. Chloe, 25, was their golden child, their masterpiece, head cheerleader, homecoming queen, straight-A student without ever seeming to crack a book, now a rapidly rising star at a prestigious marketing firm. Her path through life was paved with gold and my parents' unending, effusive praise. My path, it seemed, was paved with the very gravel and dirt I was currently digging into. I heard the smooth, hydraulic hiss of the back patio door sliding open. "Leo, have you seen the Amex bill?" My father's voice boomed across the manicured lawn, crisp and impatient even in the stifling heat. I sat back on my heels, wiping a streak of sweat and dirt from my brow with the back of a grimy glove. "No, Dad. It probably came in the mail. I haven't been inside." He strode over, his polished Italian loafers looking profoundly out of place against the messy, honest reality of the garden. He held out a crisp, white piece of paper like it was subpoena. "There's a charge here from Granite Peak Expeditions, $8,500. Do you know anything about this?" Granite Peak. The name sent a jolt through me. That was the ultra-exclusive, ultra-expensive guided hiking and glamping company Chloe had used for her recent wellness retreat in Colorado last month. The one she'd Instagrammed relentlessly. A cascade of photos of her grinning in designer athleisure against breathtaking mountain backdrops. Hashtag finding my zen, hashtag nature therapy. I shook my head, a bitter taste in my mouth. "That's not mine. You know I can't afford a coffee at the diner without calculating the tip for a week, let alone an $8,500 vacation. That's more than I make in 4 months. My father's face, usually a mask of controlled authority, tightened with flicker of something else. Annoyance, yes, but beneath it, a thread of unease. "Well, it's on the statement. Your mother doesn't know about it. Did Chloe borrow your car for something? A joint gift?" A cold trickle of suspicion, entirely separate from the oppressive heat, ran down my spine. It wasn't the first time. A mysterious, 4-figure charge a year ago for a high-end dental whitening clinic Chloe just happened to visit. A sizable cash withdrawal around the time she impulse bought a vintage leather jacket she coveted. My parents had always dismissed my questions with a wave of a hand. "A banking error. Leo, don't be dramatic," my mother would say. "We'll sort it out. Don't make a fuss." The explanations were flimsy, but the alternative, that my parents were actively stealing from me, had been too monstrous to entertain. But $8,500 was not a banking error. It was a college semester. It was textbooks, a lab fee, and a parking pass. It was a future. "Dad," I said, my voice quieter, harder, as I rose to my feet, shedding the gloves. "That's my tuition. Almost exactly." He blinked, his irritation momentarily replaced by genuine confusion. "What are you talking about?" "The college fund. Nana's money." The words hung in the humid air between us, heavy and significant. When my grandmother, my father's mother, passed away 5 years ago, she had left a specific, Equal inheritance for Chloe and me. $75,000 each. It was stated clearly, unequivocally, in her will, a document my lawyer father had executed himself. The money was to be held in trust, managed by my parents, for one purpose and one purpose only, our education. Mine for my undergraduate degree, Chloe for her master's. It was the only reason I, the less favored son, had ever dared to dream of university. Nana had been a public school teacher for 40 years. Education was her religion, her love language. This was her final gift to us. My father's face went through a fascinating series of minute transformations. Confusion, dawning realization, then a swift, hard settling into a mask of dismissive anger. That money is being managed, Leo. It's invested for the long term. It's not a petty cash fund for you to dip into whenever you feel like it. Now, about this credit card charge. Manage this. I snapped, the heat and 2 years of repressed frustration and exhaustion finally boiling over. I yanked the crumpled bursar's notice from my pocket and thrust it at him, my hand trembling not with fear, but with a raw, unleashed fury. I need to pay this. Now, or I lose my spot, my grants, everything. Where is my money? Dad. The mask slipped entirely, revealing something cold and panic beneath. You will watch your tone with me. Young man, that money is gone. Invested in a long-term portfolio. It's not liquid. You want an education? Then work harder. Get a third job. Your sister worked 2 jobs all through college. The hypocrisy was so breathtaking it stole the air from my lungs. Chloe hadn't worked a day in her life. Her jobs were unpaid internships my parents had fully bankrolled, complete with new professional wardrobe and a leased car to make a good impression. Her entire undergraduate degree had been paid for by my parents long before Nana died, a fact they never let me forget. Gone. The word felt like a physical blow to the chest. What do you mean, gone? Nana left it for me. It was mine. It was left in our care for your benefit, he said, his voice dropping into the low, dangerous register he used when he was truly, monumentally angry. And we have used our judgment. This conversation is over, and you will find a way to pay that tuition bill yourself. Consider a lesson in adulthood and financial responsibility. He turned on his heel and marched back into the cool, air-conditioned house, the patio door sliding shut with a definitive, silencing click that felt like the slamming of a cell door. I stood there alone in the blazing sun, covered in dirt, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Gone. Invested. Not liquid. The words echoed in my head, but they clanged, dissonant and wrong. My father, the meticulous, risk-averse corporate lawyer, would have kept that money in something safe, predictable, and accessible, like a CD ladder or a boring, low-yield index fund. He preached financial conservatism like a gospel. He wouldn't have invested $75,000 in some speculative, illiquid venture that would prevent me from accessing it for school, unless he was lying. The pieces, all the odd little fragments I consciously ignored for years, began to click together with a terrifying, sickening clarity. Chloe's brand new, cherry red convertible for her 16th birthday, while I got a 5-year-old hand-me-down sedan with a dented fender. Her semester abroad in Florence. The photos of her sipping espresso in piazzas flooding our family chat. Her lavish, doorman-building apartment downtown that my parents co-signed for a claim I now realize was laughable. The constant, steady stream of designer bags, the weekend ski trips to Aspen, the $8,500 wellness retreat. They weren't just favoring her. They were funding her entire luxurious, entitled life. And they were doing it with my future. A cold rage, clean and sharp, began to cut through the heat-induced haze. I abandoned the half-planted petunias. My shift at the diner could wait. Hell, everything could wait. I stormed into the house, ignoring my mother's call from the living room. Leo, you're tracking dirt on the hardwood. And went straight to my room, the smallest one in the house, overlooking the humming air conditioning unit. I locked the door and I called the only person my father might actually be afraid of, my Uncle Ben, my father's older brother and a gruff, no-nonsense engineer who had never had any patience for my mother's social climbing antics or my father's obsession with appearances. Uncle Ben, I said, my voice cracking with emotion the second he answered. It's Leo. I need your help. I think Dad and Mom stole from me. Nana's money. My college fund. It's gone. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of a workshop in the background, the whir of a power tool, then silence as he turned it off, then a low, gravelly sigh that sounded like it carried the weight of years. Leo, honestly, kid, I've been waiting for this call for years. My heart plummeted and then soared with a painful lurch. You knew? Not knew. Suspected. Strongly. He explained everything. Nana's was ironclad. The money was ours, unequivocally. The executors of the estate had been my father and Uncle Ben together. Ben, trusting his younger brother and wanting to keep the peace, had signed off on the transfer of the funds into 2 separate accounts set up by my father. He showed me paperwork, Leo, Ben said, his voice thick with regret and a simmering anger. It looked legitimate. Fancy legal language about educational trusts and disbursement schedules. But I always had a bad feeling in my gut. Richard, your father, he's always been insecure, especially where Chloe is concerned. She wrapped him around her little finger, and he wanted to give her the entire world to prove he could. Do you know where the money is now? I asked, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Do you have the account numbers? I have the numbers from the original estate documents, he said, but I have no idea if the money is still there. He could have moved it 12 times. But I know someone who can find out. Meet me at my workshop in an hour. The next hour passed in a blur of anxious pacing. I changed out of my dirty clothes, my mind racing. When I slipped back downstairs, my mother was in the kitchen, arranging a lavish bouquet of white tulips in a crystal vase. Leo, honey, you're not going to work in that, are you? She asked, eyeing my clean jeans and T-shirt with mild disapproval. And you didn't finish the petunias. Your father's partners are coming for cocktails tomorrow evening, and I want everything to look perfect. I looked at her. I really looked at her. The flawless blonde bob, the tasteful diamond studs in her ears, the elegant silk blouse, the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist. Congratulations on your graduation. Gift for Chloe, she'd said at the time. But a new, horrifying thought occurred to me. Had that been bought with a piece of my future, too? An hour later, I was sitting in the sleek, modern, and intimidatingly tidy office of Elena Vasquez, a forensic accountant, and an old college friend of Uncle Ben's. She was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a kind but no-nonsense demeanor. With Uncle Ben sitting solidly beside me, a reassuring presence, I told her the whole story, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and utter devastation. I showed her the bursar's notice. I told her about the BMW, the apartment, the Amex charge. She listened intently, her expression growing grimmer with each revelation. This is unfortunately more common than you think, Leo, she said softly, steepling her fingers. Parents often feel a twisted sense of entitlement to their children's inheritances. They rationalize it. We need it more. They'll waste it. We'll pay it back later. Let me see what I can find. She spent the next hour on the phone, her fingers flying across her keyboard with a quiet intensity. With the original account numbers Uncle Ben provided, she began to trace the digital footprints of my stolen future. I watched her face, my stomach churning into a tight knot with each murmured, I see, and, okay, thank you, and the furious clicking of her mouse. Finally, she hung up the phone and turned to us. Her eyes were filled with a professional, detached pity that made me want to scream. Leo, she began, and the tone of her voice told me everything I needed to know. The money was never in a formal trust. The accounts your father set up were simply joint savings accounts under his and your mother's names. The first withdrawal was made approximately 6 weeks after the estate was settled. For what? I whispered, though the answer was already carving a hollow space in my chest. She looked down at her notepad, her lips a thin line. A dealer payment to BMW of North America, $42,000, for a 2017 BMW 4 Series, registered to Chloe Marie Evans. She scrolled down her screen, each movement of her finger a tiny hammer blow. There's a wire transfer to Firenze Soggiorno, a luxury student housing and cultural immersion company in Italy, $15,000. Another for the Closet Edit, a personal stylist and shopping service, $2,500. A down payment on a condominium at the Meridian Building, $20,000. She kept reading, a horrifying, itemized ledger of my sister's life of privilege. Each entry paid for with my grandmother's dying wish for my education. I felt physically ill. Uncle Ben put a steadying hand on my shoulder, his grip tight with anger. And the rest? Ben asked, his voice gravelly. There was over $75,000. The down payment and the car don't account for all of it. Elena's face became even more solemn. There are dozens of smaller transactions over the years. Department stores, travel agencies, luxury goods retailers. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. She finally looked up, meeting my eyes. The final and largest transaction was 2 months ago. A transfer of the entire remaining balance, $62,110. And it was sent to... She didn't even need to say it. I knew. I'd seen the name on the contracts, embroidered on the napkin samples, stamped on the matchbooks at the engagement party. Ambience Events. The premier, notoriously expensive wedding planner my parents had hired for Chloe's upcoming wedding to her investment banker fiancé. The wedding that was being hyped as the social event of the season in Oak Ridge Heights. The wedding my parents had constantly fretted about the cost at the dinner table, lamenting how exorbitant everything was, how they'd have to tighten their belts, and maybe even postpone their vacation to afford it. They had already paid for it, in full, with my money. I don't remember thanking Elena or saying goodbye to Uncle Ben. I remember stumbling out of her air-conditioned office into the bright, mocking sunlight, the world tilting on its axis around me. They hadn't just dipped into it. They had systematically drained it, dollar by dollar, transaction by transaction, to furnish a life for my sister that I could only ever look at from the outside, like a kid with his nose pressed against a candy store window. The drive home was a blur of white-hot anger and a profound, gut-wrenching sense of loss. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing the family I thought I had. The house was quiet when I returned, the silence feeling like a hell breath. My mother was in the kitchen, humming, putting the final touches on her tulip arrangement. She looked up and offered her perfect, vacant smile. "Leo, there you are." I was starting to worry. "You'll need to get back to those petunias soon. The light will be gone. And maybe run the vacuum in the living room? Your father's clients." Her voice trailed off as she finally registered the expression on my face. The smile faltered. "Leo, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, I had. The ghost of the future I should have had. "Why?" The word came out raw, torn from somewhere deep and wounded inside me. Her face creased in practiced confusion. "Why what, sweetie? Why vacuum?" "Because the house needs to be presentable." "Why did you do it, Mom?" I interrupted, my voice low and shaking. "Why did you take Nana's money?" My money? The color drained from her face, leaving her expertly applied makeup looking like a mask. She set down a tulip with exaggerated, trembling care. I don't know what you're talking about." "You're being hysterical. Did something happen at work?" "The BMW, Mom," I said, taking a step closer, each word a bullet. "The apartment in Florence. The personal stylist. The $8,500 charge to Granite Peak Expeditions. Ambience Events." I listed them off like a death knell, watching each one land, watching her composure crack a little more with each item. "You spent it. You spent every last cent of the $75,000 Nana left for me on Chloe. You sold my future, my education, so she could have a nicer car, a fancier apartment, and a prettier wedding." The crystal vase of tulips slipped from her hands and crashed to the floor, explosion of water, glass, and scattered blooms that spread across the expensive Italian tile. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. Not guilt, not remorse. Terror of being found out. The facade was shattered. "How dare you?" she finally shrieked, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. "How dare you accuse me of such a thing? After all we've done for you." That money was a gift to this family. We raised you. We clothed you. We fed you. You owe us everything. You are so ungrateful. I owe you nothing. I roared back. 2 years of working until my hands were raw and my body ached, of skipping meals to save money, of watching my sister live a life I was unknowingly subsidizing, finally exploding into the open. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to love us equally. Nana gave that money to me. It was mine. Love doesn't pay the bills. My father's voice cut through the chaos like a whip. He stood in the kitchen doorway, home early from work, his face a thundercloud of fury. You ungrateful little shit. After everything we've given you, this is the thanks we get? Spying on our finances? Making wild accusations. Given me? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You've given me nothing but crumbs and bills. You gave Chloe everything. You stole from me. You're nothing but thieves. The word hung in the air, ugly and final. Silencing my mother's sobs for a split second. My father took a menacing step toward me, his finger jabbing the air. Get out, he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. Get out of my house. If you're so grown up that you can make these disgusting accusations, you can go live on your own. See how far you get without us. I didn't move. I was done moving for them. I was done flinching. A strange, cold calm settled over me. No, I said, my voice even and firm. I'm not going anywhere. You are going to give me my money back. Every last penny. With interest. My mother started to cry again, but these were tears of self-pity, of thwarted entitlement. We can't. Don't you understand? It's gone. The wedding is in 3 months. The deposits are paid. The dress is bought. What were we supposed to do? Tell Chloe she can't have the wedding of her dreams? Break her heart? Embarrass us in front of everyone we know? The sheer, unvarnished narcissism of it left me speechless. My future versus their social embarrassment. So you'll just sacrifice my dreams instead? I said, my voice now dangerously, icily calm. You have 3 months to figure it out. Take out a loan. Mortgage this perfect house. Sell your precious cars. I want my $75,000, plus the interest it should have earned, in a bank account with my name on it by the end of the week. Not a joint account. Mine. I turned my gaze to my father, holding his furious stare. Or I go to the State Bar Association and every local news outlet that will listen, and I tell them the whole story. How esteemed lawyer Richard Evans, partner at Crawford & Steele, executive of his own mother's estate, systematically stole $75,000 from his teenage son to fund his daughter's lavish lifestyle. I wonder what your partners will think about that at tomorrow's cocktail party. The blood drained from his face. His reputation was his most prized possession. The threat of it being publicly shattered was a nuclear option, and he knew I now had my finger on the button. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving them standing amidst the shattered crystal, the ruined flowers, and the scattered remains of their lies. I went to my room and started throwing essentials into a duffel bag. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Ben, outside when you're ready. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. But for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the power. I had the truth. I had the evidence. And I wasn't going to let them forget it. I zipped up my bag, took one last look at the small room that had never truly felt like mine, and walked out of their house and out of their lives without a backward glance.